How's it going, everybody? Cameron here with Canadian Gamer, coming at you with a little bit of a VR. Today's VR is in regards to a video that Gotchi Gaming Off the Grid put out yesterday. Just more or less talking about, is the Nintendo Entertainment System, the NES Classic Edition here, is it considered the GOAT? Are there retro gamers out there that are throwing too much shade on the NES? Is it unfair to suggest that there's only about 20 good games on the NES? Well, I'm here to give you my quick little hot take on it. As somebody who is older than Wes and Robert, and I'm also older than Megadan29, not by much. I'm 41. So I think those guys were still in diapers when the NES was on its way out. That doesn't mean anything. They can still have an opinion on it. I'm just saying I was a little bit older. I was there. I was about 6 years old when my parents purchased us the Nintendo Entertainment System. And the games we got, the packing game, obviously, Duck Hunt and Mario. And we got Mega Man 2, and we got the original Metroid. So the thing you have to understand about the Nintendo is, like a lot of other things in this world, in period, okay, before the Super Nintendo was out on the market, Sega Genesis wasn't even out yet. In period, the Nintendo was incredible. It was revolutionary. The games that were really good on the console were really good. Better than anything you would play on your Atari 2600. Hell, even better than a lot of the games that were being released on home computer, even back in those Stone Age days. That being said, and I'm going to try to explain this in a way where it's not condescending and try to keep it as professional as possible. I don't want to offend anybody here. When the Super Nintendo came out and the Sega Genesis, okay, that is like the rare instance. There's an argument that maybe the PS1 era, PS1 and 64, the leap from 8-bit to 16-bit was truly a huge leap, okay? Games nowadays, I don't care what you say, as good as games are right now in 2024, it's not revolutionary. It's not significantly better than what we had on the Xbox 360 and the PS3. It's the last 10, 15 years hasn't really been a huge leap. It hasn't been revolutionary. But when the 16-bit consoles came out, and I can attest because I wanted a Sega Genesis as a kid, and that's not what I got. My parents ended up purchasing us a Super Nintendo for Christmas of 1993. And I just remember playing Super Mario World, and it was like the most incredible packing game of all time. It's just unbelievable. Like, just incredible. And just all the other good games that came out for the Sega Genesis and the Super Nintendo. When I look back on it in the year 2024, I don't play my NES Classic very often. And, well, yes, there are more than 20 good games on the Nintendo. If you had a gun to my head right now and told me to pick 20 games that I could play on the system, I'd have a hard time naming 20 good games for the NES, because for every good game that came out for the Nintendo, there's about 20 hot, steaming piles of shit games that came out on the console. It's just a fact. And yes, you could make that argument for the Sega Genesis and the Super Nintendo as well. But I find in the year 2024, and this is just my opinion, if you disagree, that's cool. I find the NES has aged like milk. Honest to God. It's hard to go back and play a lot of those games. It really is. It really is. Whereas when I go back to Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, even TurboGrafx 16, I'm starting to dip my toes in the water with that. I find that era, those games have aged really well. But when I look back to the Nintendo, I don't look at it as the GOAT. Honestly, I don't. There is probably about 20 games that I would still play on that console, if that. To be honest with you, a lot of the games, it's your nostalgia that's speaking. Okay, you play a lot of these games, and the first 10 minutes you're like, oh yeah, I remember this when I was a kid. Yeah. And then after 15, 20 minutes, you just shut it off. You're like, okay, yeah, I'm done with it. Now, Robert and Wes brought up a good point talking about how, modern games like Red Dead Redemption 2 or even, The Outer Worlds or Starfield or Cyberpunk 2077, you put 150 hours into some of these magnum opuses. Will you ever go back and play these games ever again? Yeah, there is an argument to be had with regards to that. I think somebody in their comment section was saying like the PS5 shits all over the NES. I mean, if you're factoring in the PS4 backwards compatibility, I think there's an argument to be had for sure. For sure. Again, we didn't have the games we have today. We didn't have back then, but gun to my head, if I was on a deserted island, I could only bring one system with me, PS4 or the NES. I would be taking a PS4. I'm sorry, I would be. I wouldn't be taking the NES with me. I've been saying it for years. The NES has really aged like milk. I find the Sega Genesis has aged like a fine wine. For whatever reason, it just keeps getting better with age. Not so much the Super Nintendo. That's just personal preference for me. But when you're talking about the original Nintendo, it is one of the best consoles of all time. I'm not arguing that. I'm just saying, for me personally as a gamer, I have a hard time going back to that era. I just do. Things have moved on. We have moved on. We have ridiculous expectations now as far as what to expect from a video game. And this, for me, doesn't really fill that void. It's fun to go back and play these games in short little bursts. But, like, even I picked up NES edition here, Nintendo World Championships, and while it's fun to play, I don't think you could argue most gamers out there would really prefer to have a Nintendo World Championships SNES edition. Let's be honest here. Same goes for the Super Nintendo Mini here. Way better, more appealing, more replay value than the NES Classic, okay? That's just my opinion on it. I'm being honest with you. Yes, I enjoyed the NES back in the day when I had one as a child. But it doesn't compare to the Super Nintendo. It doesn't compare to the mighty Sega Genesis, those 16-bit powerhouses. It just really doesn't. It doesn't. So, that's my opinion on it. Shovelware City on the Nintendo. So much garbage on there. I don't know why you would want to try to amass a complete North American or PAL region collection of NES games. I think that's just a waste of time. It's a waste of money. That's just my opinion on it. Anyways, what are your thoughts? Leave it in the comments below. Is the NES the GOAT, or is it aged like a glass of warm, moldy, stinky milk? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways, guys, that's going to do it for this video. Thanks so much for watching. Have a good night.